Hi again, here we are. We continue with our networks, right? On the previous video I told you that it was going to be tightly related to the next one, okay? On the previous video we have seen what is a domain, okay? We have learned the structure of a domain, how to buy one, okay? But how do we use domains on actual networks, right? That is what we are going to do on this simulation. First of all, we are going to create one network, imagine for our company. On our company we have 3 computers, 1, 2 and 3. One of them will have static IP address and the other 2 dynamic, so we need a DHCP server, and we have a web server where we have our intranet. In order to connect all of this, we will need a switch, and I am going to give these elements a group which is company, okay, just to make it more attractive visually. Right, I'm going to give them a group company. Remember that this has nothing to do with real networks, that on our simulator it will allow us to group the different elements visually so that we know that they belong to the same network. Okay. And let's link everything. Let's create a link, the switch with the web server that contains our intranet, the switch with each of the computers, and the switch with the DHCP server. Apart from our network, we are going to create an external network for our ISP. Okay, the ISP is the company that gives us access to the internet. Okay, so we are going to give our ISP a switch and a couple of web servers. Okay, this is our ISP. Let's give them a group. Okay, let's call this group ISP to group them visually. And let's link them. That's it. In order to connect our company to our ISP, we will need a router that will connect our network to our ISP's network. This router will have one cable connecting its LAN side. This is our local network. And another connector connected to the WAN side, that is to our ISP's network, right? So this router is connecting our network with its LAN port with our ISP's network, that is with the internet, okay, using its WAN connector. Let's configure everything. Let's begin with our ISP. And let's give these HTTP servers their IP addresses. Okay, they are going to be public IP addresses because they are connected to the internet. I'm going to use this network 96.101, and this first web server is going to be IP 100. This second server is going to have IP 101, and the router's one side that is going to be connected to my ISP's network is going to be 96.101 and 1. Okay, so this is my ISP's network configured. Our second step will be configuring our private network. I will begin with the router's LAN side. Okay, it is going to be 10.0.0.254. Okay, remember, this is my company, so I will use private IP addresses. Save. The DHCP server is going to be the IP 10.0.0.1. This computer will have a static IP address, for example IP 10, and the web server. Okay, servers usually must have the static IP addresses, so I'm going to give this one the address 250 inside my network. Okay, so I have given all the elements their private IP addresses. I need to configure the elements inside my network, okay, in order to be able to connect to the internet. Remember that on the DHCP server I must configure the DHCP server itself, okay, to tell the clients with dynamic IP addresses, okay, that are going to use this range. This is okay for me. They must use the gateway 10.0.0.1, okay, that is the node 1, sorry, 254, okay, that is the router's LAN IP address. Okay, these two computers, okay, in the case that they want to connect to the internet, they will have to use this router to go outside the network. Okay, and for this computer, if it wants to connect to the internet, it should use gateway 10.0.0.254. I add it and I save. And now this computer can connect to the internet, can ping, for example, okay, let's check from network diagnostics. If I try to ping 96 100 101, okay, if everything is correctly configured, I should be able to ping that computer and get a response. Great. But this is nothing new. Okay, this is what we did on the previous simulations, right? Now let's imagine that I want to use our internal web server, but I don't want to use its IP address in order to talk to it. Okay, I want to use a domain name. I want to be able to talk to this server, okay, by using, for example, a domain intranet.mycompany.com, right? Imagine I have bought, okay, my company has bought the domain mycompany.com, and I want to create a subdomain for this web server that contains our intranet. How can I do it? Okay, I need someone to do the translation. Okay, I need a DNS server. DNS servers allows us to translate domain names to IP addresses, right? They contain a database, okay, and we can ask them, okay, give me the IP address for this domain. So, in order to do it, I will use a DNS server. Okay, in this case, I am going to add this to our company, and as a server it is going to need a static IP address inside my network. This is going to be 10.0.0.2, and I am going to configure this DNS server to be able to translate the domain intranet.mycompany.com and say that this is computer 100.0.0.250. Now, if my computer wants to talk to this server by using the domain, okay, it should ask this other computer, okay, tell me which is the IP address linked to the domain intranet.mycompany.com. This one knows why, because we have configured it, okay, so it knows the answer, okay, it knows that this is linked to this IP address, okay, this knows the answer, this computer can give this other computer the answer, and this one can talk, for example, it can ping this computer not, okay, by its IP address, but by the domain that we have configured to be linked to that IP address. So what does this computer need to know in order to ask the DNS server something? Okay, if I edit the IP information, okay, here I've got the option to configure 1 or 2 DNS servers, okay. We can use, on real networks, we usually configure 2, okay, because if one of them doesn't work, we can use the other, right? In this case, we are just going to configure 1, which is going to be the DNS server that we just created inside our company. Okay, so I add a DNS server to the IP configuration of this computer, and now we can perform a DNS lookup. That is, we can ask our DNS server, which DNS server? This one, okay, the one that we have configured for our computer. We can ask this DNS server, which is the IP address linked to intranet.mycompany.com. And if I perform a lookup, I will see a message, okay, that is a lookup for intranet.mycompany.com that goes to the DNS server that I have just configured, and as this knows the answer, okay, it sends me a response with the IP address for this computer. And now, from network diagnostics, instead of writing here an IP address, I can write a domain, because now this computer, okay, he has asked its DNS server which is the IP address linked to this domain. It gave us the answer, and now this one has learned the answer. So now he can ping, okay, you can look at this, it is sending a ping to this IP address, not to the domain, but to the IP address. Why? Because it knows that this domain is linked to this IP address. Okay, and we got the response. So we are using here a DNS server that knows the domains that are internal to our company. But this DNS server doesn't have all the domains from all the different companies over the world, right? We cannot configure everything inside one DNS server. So if this DNS server doesn't know something, it can ask, okay, the answer to some other DNS server. Imagine that our ISP has a DNS server so let's give this DNS server the IP address 96.100.1.200, and this DNS server has two domains. Okay, the first one is www.myisp.com, that is linked to IP address 96.100.1.100, and another one that is mail.myisp.com, which is linked to IP 101. Let's add these two and save. What happens if I want to use the domains configured on my ISP's DNS server, okay, that are not known by my DNS server, but the one that I am using? I can configure my DNS server so it asks, okay, it forwards my request to some other DNS server, okay, just in case it doesn't know the answer. How can I do that? I need two things. First of all, this DNS server is outside my network, so I have to give my DNS server a gateway, which would be 10.0.0.254, so we can contact to someone outside the network. And on the DNS server's configuration, I can use a forwarder. Okay, a forwarder will be another DNS server. Okay, and in case that this one doesn't know the answer, it will forward the query to another one. Okay, it will ask to another one. Okay, so in case it doesn't know the answer, it is going to ask my ISP's DNS server. Now, what happens if my computer wants to talk to mail.myesp.com? First of all, it will perform a lookup. Okay, it wants to talk to mail.myisp.com, and it is going to ask the DNS server that it has configured. But this doesn't know, but it has a forwarder, so it is going to ask the same question to its forwarder. The forwarder knows the answer, so it sends the answer back to my DNS server, and my DNS server will give me the answer. And now that I know this, I can ping mail.myisp.com. Okay. I have contacted this web server, okay, without knowing its IP address directly. Okay, I have used a domain that is linked to that IP address. When on the internet, for example, I say www.maristasbilbao.com and I press enter, okay, my computer automatically, okay, sends a request to its DNS server, okay, asking, can you give me the IP address of www.maristasbilbao.com? And once it receives the IP address, it contacts, right, with the web server, in this case with the web server, which is linked to that IP address. Okay, and we are almost done here. Okay, we are missing one thing. What happens with these two computers, the ones with dynamic IP addresses? When they receive their network configuration, their IP configuration, they should be receiving, okay, which DNS server they should use. So on our DHCP server's configuration, we will have to say, okay, these computers with these IP addresses are going to use this gateway, and they are going to use, okay, this DNS server. Okay, in our case, we are going to use a DNS server inside our company. Okay, usually at home we don't have DNS servers, so we directly use the DNS servers that are provided by our ISP. Okay, on this scenario, we are using a corporate DNS server that, in case it doesn't know something, it will forward the question, okay, the query, to our ISP's DNS server. So if I do this, and from these computers I request their DHCP information, once they are configured, they can perform DNS lookups. For example, www.myisp.com, they pass the query to our DNS server, and as it doesn't know it, it sends the query to its forwarder, and once we receive the answer, we can now, for example, ping the IP address that is linked, okay, the IP address that is linked to that domain. So ping reaches the computer and it goes back to our computer. And now, real computer. Two things. Can I know which are the DNS servers that are being used by my computer? Yes. If I open Command Console and I write ipconfig/all and I look for my connections, okay, in my case I am using Wi-Fi, okay, here I can see servidores DNS, okay, because my Windows is in Spanish, okay, and English it will be something like DNS servers, okay, and I can see that my computer is using these two DNS servers, okay. So in case that I want to use a domain, my computer will ask one of these two DNS servers which IP address is linked to that domain, right? It will receive the answer, and it will contact to that computer, okay, because now it knows the IP address linked to the domain. And apart from this, can I perform DNS lookups, okay, with my computer directly? Yes. If I do this, NS lookup, and the domain, for example, www.maristasbilbao.com, okay, I will receive this answer. Okay, the answer has two parts. The first of all, okay, tells me who is the DNS server that gave me the answer. Okay, this DNS server here, that is one of the DNS server configured on my computer. Okay, this DNS server here gave me this answer. Okay, as this is in Spanish, here I've got respuesta. Okay, in English it should be the answer. Okay, so this is the answer. The answer is that www.maristasbilbao.com is linked to this IP address. So anytime I write on my browser www.maristasbilbao.com in order to see, okay, to access my school's web page, okay, website, I am really talking to a computer with this IP address, okay, but it is much easier to write this, okay, than this, right? So this is how we use domains, okay, on real networks, right? We have to use DNS servers that contains databases, okay, of domains and IP addresses, so we can translate, okay, we can make the translations between the domains and the IP addresses. Okay, so hope you understood the concept. Thank you. See you on the next video.